The first time since his father's cancer diagnosis, Prince William is back to work and addressing his family's health scare.
I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow.
Prince William has stumbled upon a revelation that overturned nearly everything he thought he understood about both his parents. 3 decades after his mother's death, a secret buried inside King Charles's private archives surfaced, a concealed letter, Diana's long-rumoured cassette recordings, and a handwritten diary that was never supposed to see daylight. When William discovered what his father had kept hidden, his composure crumbled. Why did Charles lock it away for so long? What peril lay in Diana's final words? And could the monarchy survive the fallout? Keep watching, this saga is only beginning. For years, William was convinced he knew the full story of his mother's final chapter, until the day he discovered something he was never meant to see, a letter tucked deep inside his father's personal trove. It wasn't any ordinary note. It bore King Charles's own handwriting, penned shortly after Diana's passing. The instructions were explicit. Palace's staff were to withhold several critical pieces of Diana's estate. Most urgently, a private diary and a set of tapes she'd recorded for her sons. William had never even heard of those tapes. Palace insiders described the moment he read the letter as heart-stopping. The prince, usually a master of public calm, allegedly sat motionless, disbelief etched on his face. His mother's voice had been hidden, not by enemies or the press, but by his own father. Questions flooded his mind. Why the secrecy? What did those recordings contain, and why uncover them now after so many silent years? Trust within the House of Windsor shattered in an instant. During the turbulent months before her death, Diana safeguarded her truth for William and Harry. She poured her memories into a personal journal and recorded intimate messages on cassette, meant only for her boys. The diary captured her reflections, regrets, and warnings. The tapes whispered through her own voice, held stories, apologies, and hopes for their futures, alongside unfiltered commentary about her marriage, the royal family, and fears for her son's safety. Charles, fearing public uproar and internal chaos, deemed the material too explosive. He locked it away, burying not just Diana's words, but the pain she'd endured. Now, with those very pages and tapes finally in William's hands, her long-silenced voice is poised to speak once more. Father and son behind closed doors, the inevitable confrontation unfolded far from cameras. Just William and the king, no titles, no ceremony. A son wounded to the core confronted the father who had made the decision. William's single fragile question cut through the air. "Why didn't you trust me with this?" Charles, visibly shaken, murmured, "I wanted to spare you her pain." Instead of soothing him, the answer deepened the wound. For William, it wasn't protection. It was control, robbing him of the chance to hear his mother's last thoughts when he needed them most. Voices rose, emotions spilled. William pressed, "Who else approved this? Was it only you?" Charles offered nothing but a vague, "It was complicated." Aides later described the atmosphere as a thundercloud years in the making. When the meeting ended, William walked out, eyes red, knuckles white, carrying the diary and tapes to his study, where he remained until dawn. Friends say the discovery hollowed him. Behind palace doors, the easy smile vanished, replaced by distant stares. To Kate, he reportedly confessed, "I feel like I'm losing her all over again." Royal engagements were quietly rescheduled. The prince asked for solitude. Grief resurfaced, now mixed with fury directed at the very institution he had sworn to uphold. This was no ordinary sadness. It was a fracture that could reshape the monarchy itself. From that night forward, William would never look at the crown or his father the same way. And for Britain's royal house, the repercussions have only just begun. She poured her heart into those pages, writing not just as a princess, but as a mother desperate to protect her sons. Diana spoke of William and Harry with a raw, aching love. She feared the royal machine would one day pull them in and reshape them into something unrecognisable. But perhaps the most chilling part of her writings wasn't just about them, it was about the world they'd inherit. Diana questioned whether the monarchy should ever have such control over the lives of its own children. She recalled specific tender moments, like young William wiping her tears and saying, "Don't cry, Mummy, I'll be your knight." That memory, read decades later, left William gutted. One palace aide revealed he spent hours alone with the journal, locked in his study. When he finally emerged, he told Kate, "It's like hearing her speak again after all these years." But this wasn't just a trip through memory. This was clarity. Diana didn't want her truth filtered by press officers or polished documentaries. She wanted her sons to know the version of events only she could tell. And now that William held it in his hands, the question was no longer what had been hidden, but what he would do with it. When senior aides learned that William had uncovered Diana's lost journal and tapes, a hush fell over Buckingham Palace. But behind closed doors, panic erupted. Emergency strategy meetings were called, media advisors were briefed. The directive? Keep it quiet, contain the fallout, treat it as a private family issue, no statements, no acknowledgements. But fear gripped the institution. What if Diana's voice was heard again, fierce, vulnerable and unfiltered? What if her words undid decades of royal imagery building? Some advisors even suggested quietly relocating the materials. William stood firm. To him, they weren't artifacts. They were his mother's final wishes, and he would not allow them to be erased. As the palace scrambled to maintain control, they overlooked one critical factor. This truth wasn't theirs to suppress anymore. As William processed what he'd found, one thought echoed in his mind. Did Harry already know? For years, his brother had hinted in interviews that there were things they'd never been told. He'd spoken of being emotionally frozen after Diana's death, and of a royal family more interested in optics than healing. Now, with the tapes and journal in hand, William began to wonder, was this the truth Harry had been circling all along? Overcome with emotion, William reached out to his estranged brother. The call was brief, but it ended with 7 words that could change everything. There's something I need to show you. Could their mother's voice, the one thing they both lost too soon, be the thread that binds them together again? It was a possibility filled with both hope and heartbreak, but not everyone welcomed that truth. Among the most incendiary parts of the tapes were Diana's unguarded thoughts about Camilla. She didn't hold back. She spoke of betrayal, heartbreak, and the way Charles's long-standing affair had scarred her, not just as a wife, but as a mother desperately trying to protect her sons from scandal. Her now iconic line, "There were 3 of us in this marriage," was only the beginning. The tapes went further. Diana feared that one day Camilla would reshape the monarchy in her own image, and that her own legacy would be quietly erased to make room. It's a fear that now feels hauntingly prophetic. Since Charles's coronation and Camilla's elevation to Queen Consort, Diana's presence has slowly been erased from official speeches, portraits, and palace ceremonies. To William, this wasn't just painful, it was deeply personal. The woman whose choices had once caused his mother so much pain was now thriving in the silence that buried her voice. Through the emotional storm, one person never left William's side, and Kate. More than a spouse, she became his quiet strength, listening, supporting, steadying him through the unravelling of everything he thought he knew. Insiders say she sat beside him for hours as he read the journal and listened to the tapes. She didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. Behind her quiet demeanour, however, there was fire. Sources claim Kate believed these materials should have been given to William years ago. Her solidarity came at a cost. Tensions between her and Camilla, once subtle, began to surface publicly. At one event, Camilla reportedly made a comment to Kate, who simply turned away without a word. The chill in the air was unmistakable. Now, with the family fractured and Diana's voice echoing louder than ever, William and Kate are faced with a choice: remain silent to protect tradition or speak and risk it all. The palace had tried to contain it, but the truth couldn't be buried forever. It started with a whisper, an anonymous tip that William had uncovered hidden elements of Diana's will. Then came leaked details, the tapes, the journal, the confrontation with Charles. Finally, the dam broke, and social media had one resounding message: let Diana speak. Fans across the globe rallied behind her memory. Photos, quotes, and tributes flooded timelines. But this wasn't just nostalgia, it was fury. For the first time in decades, the public's anger turned not toward tabloids or gossip, but toward the palace itself. Was Charles trying to protect the monarchy, or just himself? Had Camilla risen on the back of a silenced legacy? Had William spent 30 years in the dark while others knew the truth? Support for William surged. Commentators called him his mother's son. Every day the palace remained silent, public suspicion grew. Diana's voice was no longer a whisper, it was a movement. Inside palace walls, the atmosphere had changed. William was no longer grieving in silence. He was thinking, strategizing, and insiders say he's weighing his next steps very carefully. For years, William has championed transparency and mental health. Now those ideals are being put to the ultimate test. He's reportedly considering releasing portions of the journal or tapes, not to humiliate his father, but to finally let Diana's truth be heard. Others say he plans to share them privately with Harry first, in a bid to rebuild their broken bond before the public storm hits. Whatever the path, one thing is clear. This isn't just a personal moment, it's a turning point. Senior royals fear a generational rift is looming, between those clinging to the past and those ready to redefine the monarchy's future. For William, though, it's not political, it's personal. This is about his mother, and her voice will not be silenced again. 3 decades after her death, Princess Diana may once again be the most powerful force in the monarchy. Her words, once buried, now ring louder than any royal decree. And at the centre of it all stands William, the boy who walked behind her coffin, now the man who must decide whether her voice is finally heard. The monarchy has survived scandal, loss, even exile, but this is different. This time the threat isn't external, it's personal. It's a truth that refuses to stay hidden. Will William choose silence to preserve the institution that betrayed his mother? Or will he speak out, even if it shakes the throne? One palace insider said, "This is the hardest choice he's ever faced." But one thing is clear. He knows what Diana would have wanted. King Charles, meanwhile, finds himself increasingly isolated, caught between his son's grief and his own past decisions. And Camilla, her once stabilised public image, is again under scrutiny, now haunted by the re-emergence of the woman history tried to forget. The world is watching, the people are listening, and Diana, no longer just a memory, is speaking once more. If William lets her voice rise, the monarchy may never be the same again. But maybe, just maybe, that's how true healing begins. What would you do in his place? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more revelations from behind the palace gates.